First of all, I want to thank you for your participation. Today I will talk about the shift in religion-state relations. Thank you for your participation. Today I will talk about the shift in religion-state relations in Turkey. The trajectory of state-religion relations in different parts of the world manifests a plurality of models ranging from close relations to separationist relations. These different modes of relations between state and religion can be analyzed as a consequence of the different historical and political experiences each country goes through over time. Today, we can observe states with established churches such as Denmark, Britain, Greece, and Norway. We can also see states with strict secularism such as France and the US. Between these two opposites, though, we can also witness states attending to a more cooperative approach like Germany and Italy. However, a remarkable similarity has developed in all these Western countries since the 1980s. That's an increasing public demand for more religion. After a long period of debate on secularism in Europe, states are currently taking steps to their post-secular societies in Habermasian terms. In these post-secular societies, religious individuals and groups have recently become much more willing to participate in public discussions and to contribute to society. This change in the social dynamics has led to a more cooperative model of church-state relations in Western democracies. In the case of Turkey, following a long period of religion-state relations based on an intertwined model during the Ottoman era, a radical shift took place in the first quarter of the 20th century following the foundation of the Republic of Turkey. The new republic was very much influenced by the French laicism. After decades of aggressive secularism, the Turkish state has stepped into a more harmonious relationship with religion in the last 10 years. In this presentation, I would like to question whether this shift is in tune with the shift in Western models of states and religion relations. First, let me talk about a few examples from some Western states which will better illuminate the move from a strict separatist to a rather collaborative model of secular state practices. As is well known, secularism is a constitutional principle in the US and was determined by legislation in the First Amendment of the Constitution in 1791. This legislation protects the religious freedoms of individuals while also preventing the American state from adopting or supporting a religion in economic or socio-political terms. However, recent issues like the voucher system or faith-based initiatives have heightened debates about American secularism. Financial support for faith-based initiatives by the state came up during the Bush administration in 2000s. The aim was to reach the poor in society via religious organizations. However, a heated public discussion critical of the secular character of the American state arose. Finally, the judiciary evaluated the issue with regards to the First Amendment and decided that it was in compliance with the Constitution. Another discussion in the US on the matter of church-state relations was concerning the state's financial support for students in need. In the 1990s, the American government carried out a voucher program which provided financial assistance for families in need to afford their children's educational costs. What was perceived as contentious, though, was whether inclusion of families who choose to send their children to religious schools transgressed the constitutional principle for secularism. Once again, the Supreme Court ruled in the 2000s, declaring the program as constitutional. A similar trend can be traced in Europe as well. Post-communist societies, for instance, launched state policies to rehabilitate church-state relations and move toward a milder model. Self-declared communist states such as Hungary, Russia, Slovakia, or Macedonia dropped atheism and attained secularism in 2000s, whereby they passed new legislations that granted religious rights. On the other hand, France, known as the motherland of laicism, has also gone through significant developments concerning church-state relations. As a constitutional principle in 1946, French laicism has been widely debated around its rigid take on the use of religious symbols in public sphere, particularly in the context of Muslim immigrants in the last decade. However, the state's efforts for mediation to form an umbrella religious organizations as a representative body of Muslims in France, and its funding for an institute to inform teachers in public schools about the role and the influence of religion in society can be regarded as signs of a shift in religion-state relations in France as well. Now let me return to Turkey and briefly analyze how religion-state relations have evolved in the last decade. Ali Fuat Başgil, a respected scholar of law in the 1950s, refers to 3 stages of religion-state relations in Turkey. In his terms, the first period can be defined as an era of state subjected to religion, referring to the conventional approach to the Ottomans until the 19th century. The second stage is defined as an era of semi-religious state, which began with the declaration of Tanzimat, a series of state reforms in 1839 and lasted until 1924, a year after the establishment of the Republic of Turkey. And finally, Başgil refers to an era of religion subjected to the state, which began in the 1924 and lasted throughout the 20th century. As a scholar of 20th century, Başgil was unable to observe or predict how secularism evolved in the 21st century Turkey, which I will discuss later. The first period of Turkey's state-religion relations as an era of state subjected to religion is a matter of debate for scholars who question whether this refers to a theocracy or not. Scholars such as Niyazi Berkes and Nur Vergin do not evaluate the Ottoman rule as a theocracy in Western style. For example, Vergin states that the Ottoman state was not a state that was dependent on religion, but rather a state that cooperated with religion. In this type of state, the Sultan enjoyed a wide range of authority for religious legislation as long as he observed Islamic principles. The second period of semi-religious state started in 1839 with the Tanzimat. This period was perceived as the beginning of secularization in Ottoman administration as well as in the military and in education. New law schools based upon the Western system of jurisprudence were instituted. Coexistence of secular and Islamic courts as well as laws characterized the legal field at that time. Similar developments took place in the field of education, whereby religious schools coexisted with secular public and military schools that were opened, particularly during the reign of Sultan Abdülhamid II. The third period of the era religion subjected to the state referred to a crucial shift in religion-state relations in Turkey. During this period, the founding civil and military elite of the Turkish Republic opted for full-swing Westernization as its route to modernization. The Ottoman gradual reformism was perceived as useless by the founding elite, for it contained the coexistence between secular and religious institutions. Instead, they defended a strict laicism and replaced Islamic institutions with secular ones. In addition, they abandoned the constitutional statement, which declared that Islam as the religion of the Turkish Republic in 1928 and added the principle of laicism to the constitution in 1937. In the realm of education, the Turkish parliament passed a law known as the Unification of Education in 1924, which closed all madrasas and ordained a unified education under a secular school system. Although the law referred to the establishment of some schools with an intensive religious education, such schools were opened for a short time and closed down in 1930. As a result, there was no legal religious education taught in Turkey until 1949. Moreover, the caliphate, as the formal institution signifying the Islamic political authority, was abolished on the same day of the educational reform, and the Directorate of Religious Affairs was established. However, the Directorate was not utilized for the flourishing of religion. Instead, this institution was expected to keep religion and religious demands of public under control. The Directorate had no authority in determining religious instruction or the writing of textbooks. it neither had a right to make statements about religious publishing or any of the state's policies on religion. The secular state did not only eliminate the Islamic institutions, but also launched aggressive policies to westernize society. To this end, they promoted a new understanding of Islam, cut from all ties with tradition and the collective Islamic memory, closing down the tombs of Muslim saints, changing the alphabet from Arab to Latin script, and the Turkification of the call to prayer were some of the steps that aim to effectively erase religious traditions and weaken society's links with the past. After World War II, Turkey became a partner with the US, which put pressure on the Turkish government for the transition to democracy. The first multi-party elections were thus held in 1946, but the political system was continued to be under a firm military tutelage, which ascribed to itself the role as the sole protector of the secularist regime. Turkey's democratic history, as such, has been interrupted with military interventions throughout the 20th century, the first occurring in May 1960 and the last in February 1997. The military, with a strong secularist mindset, undertook the last military intervention, commonly referred to as a postmodern coup, with the support of the media, academics, and some secularist politicians. The generals at that time accused the government of threatening the secular regime by promoting reactionary policies and Islamism in Turkey. An era of intense violation of religious freedom followed in 1997 coup. Religious education of any kind was prohibited before a child reached the age of 12. The very controversial headscarf ban, on the other hand, forbade all female students, staff members, and civil servants wearing of religious hijab in public sphere, and the ban was even extended to ordinary citizens who wanted to visit public institutions and universities. Merve Kavakçı, the first covered woman parliamentarian elected in 1999, was not allowed to take her oath of allegiance at the parliament due to the protest from the prime minister at the time and other secularist MPs who demanded that she left the parliament. With the election of the Conservative Democratic AK Party as it defines itself, in 2002, state-religion relations took a new turn in Turkey. Some describe this shift as normalization. This shift necessitated the elimination of the decades-long military tutelage, and the government achieved this in 2005. Only then the state was able to launch assertive policies that protected the religious rights, freedoms, and minority rights in the country. In 2013, the government declared a comprehensive democratization package that included the lifting of the ban on headscarf in public offices and universities. The package did not only expand the rights for the Muslim majority, but also for the religious minorities who have also suffered from the state's rigid secularist policies. For instance, the state returned properties previously owned by minority foundations but were seized by the state decades ago. Many synagogues, churches, and monasteries were restored and opened for use after long decades. Keeping Bashkin's three-period categorization in mind, I argue that Turkish politics and its new approach to religion-state relations in the last decade should be considered as the fourth period of Turkish secularism. In this new period, the Turkish state abandoned its exclusivist attitude and substituted it with a more cooperative approach. This cooperative approach became visible when covered women were elected as MPs and were able to represent their electorate in parliaments facing no restrictions during the last two elections. Changes regarding the status of the Presidency of Religious Affairs also illustrates the new approach. In 2010, the Presidency of Religious Affairs was included in the state protocol for the first time, when it was transformed into an undersecretary and eventually gaining direct affiliation with the office of the Prime Minister in 2014. Its new status expanded opportunities which enabled the presidency to become much more proactive and vocal in religious as well as social issues. For instance, the first chaplaincy program in hospitals was started in 1950 via the agreements signed between the Presidency of Religious Affairs and the Minister of Health. It was aimed that patients would be given moral support in this way. Another example that indicates the shift toward the collaborative model is concerning the increase of opportunity for religious instruction in public schools. For decades, such practices were seen as breaching laicism. Considering the high religiosity in society and the lack of legal institutions providing religious education, religious instruction becomes an issue of freedom of religion that the state has to deal with. It's only recently that the state confronted this issue and allowed for the teaching of optional religious courses such as Quran recitation, the life of the Prophet, and Islamic manuscript in public schools. In conclusion, I argue that rather than abandoning secularism, the Turkish state is restoring its secularism in response to the demands and the needs of its religiously devout population as well as religious minority groups. A brief analysis of the Western secular states, on the other hand, clearly illustrates that Turkey's restoration is in tune with the recent developments in the world towards a more cooperative model. Thank you for your attention.